the austerity trap, and clearly we have seen this these last days in this seminar, and we are seeing it as well every day. We can say, yes, we are in an austerity trap. The Spanish case is cut clear. So I will not expand on that, but just let me give you some facts, 4 facts. The first is that if you see it prior to the crisis, Germany and France together missed the Maastricht criteria 62 times. Ireland and Spain, never. We were the good pupils, always following the lessons, the Maastricht, the good public finance behavior. And we can see nowadays which of the countries is in a public finance crisis and what countries are not. So for me, it's clear that this crisis was not generated by public spending, and it has to be as well clear that the solution will not be found by cutting public spending. This is simple common sense. So even though I think that austerity is a value, I mean, it's not a bad value, now in Europe they are confusing austerity with asphyxia and marathon with sprints, and this is probably the big problem. Second fact is that there is no economic evidence whatsoever, any economic regression you can find in the economic science that relates growth with less public spending. On the contrary, we have nowadays in Spain another sort of evidence. Let me give you just 2 numbers: 52% young unemployment rate, 30% poverty, child poverty in Catalonia, which is one of the richest regions in Europe, and this evidence clearly is not competing at the same level of the narrative, the economic narrative that we see nowadays. The third fact is appealing to history. My husband is an economic historian. I know that I am an economist. I know that economists, we are not in our big moments of fame, not predicting the crisis or anything similar. But economic historians, I really rely on them because are the ones that do not have this narrow perspective on things and could explain better what is going on. And he's always saying the only similar situation to this crisis are the 30s. And we know how the 30s ended. The austerity recipe was also imposed. And we saw that the solution was UK leaving the gold standard, that it was similar to the euro, and Germany preparing the war machine, and also the political implications of the 30s. It's also against normal common sense that we are, again, repeating exactly the same mistakes that will have, I don't know if exactly the same consequences, but clearly as well very bad economic, social, and political consequences. And the fourth fact that has been mentioned by the other speakers as well is always go to the orthodoxy, and we saw the IMF report where the multiplier they calculated of 0.5, they say now that it's from 0.9 to 1.7. So this is clearly, I mean, the calculation that can resume the austerity trap. And if you read further on the paper, it's not so, transparently written as always, but you can also see 3 other things that we should think on it, is that expenditure multipliers are far larger than tax multipliers, while we are basing all the austerity on cutting spending and not increasing taxes. We can see as well that the multiplier implies that there is a 0.25 increase of deficits, so more clear notion of the austerity trap than that we don't have. And we can also see that because of financial constraints and clearly our asphyxia of credit, the debt, not only the deficit, but also public debt goes up with a 1% deficit, a 1% cut. So what we can see is that the programs that are imposing on us are self-defeating programs. They make no sense, and that we should stop this sprint of fiscal consolidation in the midst of a recession. And if we were to do it, please don't do it as we are doing it, that is just cutting spending. Who is listening to these facts? Clearly, no one that has the power, and this is affecting as well and threatening as well our democracy. Because what we are seeing nowadays, we see it every day in Spain, we can see it as well in Greece, is that people who have the power do not have the legitimacy of power. And this will end up as well causing an institutional crisis in Spain, but also overall Europe. Now, I am a politician, so what are the solutions to that, or what are the visions of solutions to that? The solution is a two-tier, two-dimension solution, and the problem is that it's somehow contradictory one with the other. Clearly, one dimension of the solution is Europe. And it's not only Europe abandoning this austerity obsession. It's not only that. It's a problem with how Europe works. It makes absolutely no sense that we have a single currency and 27 economic governments. This has no sense. It has never made sense in our history, and it's what we are having now. We talk a lot about the United States, and we want this federal United States of Europe. Just one symbol. The flag of the United States is a common flag. Our flag is a currency symbol. So it's like what unites us is a currency. I think that there's much more than a currency. It's a social and democratic model of peace and prosperity, but we are not never insisting on that. And this needs changes. It also needs immediate changes in the economic way we are governing, Europe is governing. Yesterday, many of them were mentioned: Eurobonds, Tobin tax, more fiscal integration, fight against fraud. This would probably solve all the debt problems. And also speaking to the markets one-to-one. We will not have any force to speak to markets from one European country. We may have the force if we do it, and Europe as a whole. We are not talking any longer about the rating agencies. And they are still going on. They are still, I mean, after what all the mistakes they did at the beginning of the crisis, putting AAAs to assets that were really rubbish, they are still going on, and we are not doing anything while probably a public independent agent at the European level would make sense, would stop speculation in these markets. But we are not working on that, clearly, because we don't have political power. The solution, and it gives ceding sovereignty to the European level. We have to be autocritical in that, because let's always use the Kennedy sentence, no? Don't ask yourself what Europe can do for you, but ask what you can do for Europe. And the truth is that we do not do much. Let's put political parties, any political party. The leaders go to the European elections or to the national elections? Always national elections. The European Commission in any of the European parliaments, the countries' national parliaments, is an important commission, or is like the last of the commissions that no one cares about it? More the second than the first. So if we do not change nationally in order to put Europe at the top of our priorities, and this means political parties, this means media as well, very relevantly, this European integration will be impossible. The second dimension of the solution clearly is changing nationwide, because now we know in Spain that austerity is not working for the citizens, it's not working for the economy, and it's not working for the markets either. We are not gaining any sort of credibility amongst markets, and this is so obvious that you cannot convince people of anything else. People know that this is not working, and they just don't want to question anything beyond that. But I think that we have to question ourselves many things beyond that, because things were not working before this crisis. If we do the exercise of saying now, okay, austerity has an end. We stop austerity from Europe. Will Spain work as a viable economy, as a viable country? And that's the question that we politicians, and I think in the debates, we need to answer ourselves. If we manage to change this first dimension, the European dimension, and instead of having cuts as a solution, we can talk about solutions. What are the solutions? Because our countries and our economies had problems before the crisis. There was ongoing socio-democratic changes, and we were not doing anything about that. For instance, in Spain, single moms, that clearly the kids of a single mom are like the ones more probably to go for social exclusion, were not receiving any sort of help, while other social groups were having a lot of protection. And we were living with that. We were not changing that. Even the left and the Socialist Party, where I'm a member, I'm saying it again, we did not spend much, but maybe we did not spend properly. In Spain and in Barcelona, going to university is much, much cheaper than bring your kid to nursery. There is non-indicator, economic, social, in terms of social investment, that tells you that this should be like that. No one was complaining. We in government were not changing that. University, very cheap, but nursery school, because we didn't have many, very expensive. This makes no sense, and we need to change that. We need to change that, as well as we need to change that, yes, we were in a welfare state, but probably people were less satisfied than ever in our history, and this equilibrium between welfare and comfort is something that we never address. So what I'm saying is that I know that it's very, very, very difficult, but we need to set up a plan for reform. No? There's this popular Spanish song that it's a bolero that says, you cannot love two women at the same time and not become crazy. I know that it's very difficult what we have to do, like loving two persons at the same time and not become crazy, but we need to set up solutions at the European level, but also a plan for reform in our countries. Otherwise, we will not come out from this crisis. These reforms, I guess my time is finishing, but I would say need to be need to be democratic reforms, more responsibility and accountability. What is crazy is that no one paid responsibility for what happened. We've seen these bankers that basically destroyed financial institutions that then we had to rescue, and they went off not only with $1 million salary, but with indemnizations. No one paid responsibility at the private or at the public level. With no accountability, it's impossible to have a big and strong democracy, so we need to put democratic reforms on the top of our priorities. Second, economic reforms, because now the fashion is everything has to be directed to exports. But export is a zero-sum game. Only with exports we are not going to be able to leave this crisis with a strong economics, because what we are seeing now, that the big contradiction is that we have enterprises creating wealth but not creating jobs. So we need to close these gaps. And this probably means that we need to focus as well, not only on productive enterprises that can export, yes, this is important, but also in other domestic economic reforms that can create jobs. Without jobs, there is no economy that can work. And the third important reform is public sector reform. We need to reform our states. We need to reform our states. We need to reform that things that I was saying, that university is cheaper than nursery school. We need to reform that. We need to reform our tax and benefit systems. I don't think that the solution to this crisis is increased taxation overall. No. Let's have a good discussion about what do we want, who pays for it, who benefits from it. Because the notion that, the left has fostered that we want more to everybody at the same time and free, this is also a notion that I don't think we can construct our future on this notion. Therefore, I'm saying let's avoid this discussion that is more state, less market, more market, less state. Let's avoid it. It's an old discussion, better markets, better state. We need to affront the two things at the same time. And as well, the notion of progress. You know, I live much better than my parents did. So the notion of progress in terms of politics was this notion of more to everybody all the time. More health, more education, more security, more of everything. My kids, like 4-year-old kid, I don't know if he's going to live better than me. And probably the solution to my kid will not be everything at all times, because the insecurity and the world changes are too big for that. So what I'm saying is, why do not recover this Kant notion of emancipation? Let's give to everybody like the freedom to pursue their lives as they want. And this implies a lot of things. In terms of equal opportunities, in terms of equality of results, the left is not talking about equality of results since many years ago. Maybe in culture and in education, we need an equality of results. We need equality of opportunities, but we need as well welfare and public programs more adjusted to different needs, different trajectories, and this probably means breaking some of the schemes that we have in mind. I think if we can work on that, probably on that and on the European dimension, we will find, we need a vision, but we will find a better future for all of us. Thank you very much.